get our very special promo code, Mojo50.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. We're live. Let's see here.
We are live.
We are live.
Dude, how come you're not playing the Odyssey stream?
Because the reason I'm not.
Oh, okay.
No, but the reason I'm not is because we're live on Odyssey, but all of my platform here is connected to Mojo.
Why do I feel like I got to talk quiet?
Check this out, though.
I'm checking. Oh, what's he doing? Ron says, check this out, though.
That's the Odyssey stream.
Yeah, it is.
Problem is that the timing won't be right.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. See, I instantly I knew that because I am a radio professional.
Yeah. I mean, I can put the Odyssey stream through, but it's just commercial, so it doesn't matter. All right. Roger Rabbit, welcome to the show. Nights Who Say Knee. Barbara D. All right, we got about a minute, 10 seconds to show time. Thanks, Thomas. I am feeling much better. I finally kicked it on Saturday, I think.
Hey, travelers, do you want to save money on your next flight? Then pick up the phone and call. That's right, call, because the best prices are not online. They're with
We got a fantastic guest joining us tonight, guys.
deals with the airlines. When they have unsold seats, they use SmartFares to fill them. So you get airline tickets at ridiculously low prices. Our prices are too low to publish online. With the extra money you'll save, you can book another trip or treat yourself to dinner or shopping. So stop searching all of those travel sites to
30
find
seconds.
the lowest price on your next flight. Let one of our SmartFares expert travel agents
Rocky's not very
find
talkative
ridiculously
tonight.
Low prices for you. Call SmartFares today and get the best price on your next flight. Guaranteed. Also, save up to 50%
I was just typing.
off
I'm not a good typer and talker at the same time.
All right, here we go.
Let's rock and roll.
20-855-325-1820. That's 855-325-1820.
Journey into the matrix of the mind. Stretch your imagination and challenge reality. Abnormal realities are beacons for the imagination. What society deems abnormal may be more real than we think. This is Abnormal Realities with your hosts, Ron Phillips and Rocky Stucci.
God, it feels like 6 days almost since we've done a show.
It's been 6 days since we did a show.
It's weird, and it feels like you haven't done it in a year. What's going on, everybody?
Welcome back.
Hey, Abnormal Realities. Phillips, El Filippo, Ron Phillips. And, of course, me, the emotional meatball, Rocky Stucci. We missed you last weekend. I'm not going to take a lot of time here, but we missed you last weekend at Miracle League. It was phenomenal.
I got to see the videos, man. I missed it. We had a farmer's market, and everybody saw that we did that. And so I'm kind of alternating weekends.
We're busy. We're busy.
We got things going on.
We need to learn how to change our perception on how we see our busyness. And I think we may learn that tonight.
Oh, yeah. There's no,
and Petey may be involved in this conversation.
And he might be. And I feel like I'm going to learn a lot. Rocky's got a little bit of background in all of what we're going to talk about tonight, but I don't. So I think we're going to learn a little bit. Tonight's guest, ladies and gentlemen, we're very, very honored to have him with us. His name's Robert Bosnak. He has been a Zurich-trained Jungian psychoanalyst for over 40 years and pioneered the Embodied Imagination method. He is the author of several books, nonfiction and fiction, translated into a wide variety of languages. He is past president of the International Association for the Study of Dreams and founder of the Santa Barbara Healing Sanctuary. He organized a score of international conferences, among which a series of Facing Apocalypse conferences about apocalyptic imagination in politics, nuclear threat, ecological issues, holy war. The EI technique has been used as a rehearsal method by the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford-upon-Avon and the Bell Shakespeare Company in Sydney. He divides his life between Santa Barbara, California, and Sydney, Australia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming Mr. Robert Bosnak. Robert, how are you tonight?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me on.
I hope I didn't butcher your intro too much.
Not too much.
I stumbled on Jungian. Jungian.
Yeah, you lost it after that. After that, you were gone. Where'd you go?
Yeah. Now, the notion of Jungian analyst, it comes from Jung. There are two, I'm a psychoanalyst, right? And there are two streams in psychoanalysis, maybe more than two, but one stream comes from Freud and another stream comes from Jung. And I am from the Jungian stream.
You know, it's interesting, folks, because before the program, we have been literally on with Robert the last 15 minutes, and I can never resist myself by entertaining certain conversations. And
Rocky has to do a whole show before we start the show.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just we talked about the Freud.
Well, it's fun.
It is fun. These are things that we just love talking about. Our minds are intrigued by it. It's what we do. It's who we are. And we were talking about Freud, and then we were talking about Bernays and just different, weird things about life and perception and it kind of like manipulative perception. And then we talk about alchemy, and that's something very big to you, sir. And so, I mean,
yes,
we should just start right from scratch and take us into maybe piggybacking from the conversation we were having before the show.
Yeah. So I've been working on alchemy for about 50 years and translating Latin texts and working on the 17th century very much. And I just came out with a series of novels about that because I'm particularly interested in the shift that happened around the 17th century where the mind completely changed, where we moved from being in a state of participation with the material and where the alchemist would be completely involved in all the metals and talk to the metals and communicate with the metals, like the little guy in between you. Yeah, Petey. Yeah, Petey is another guy, right? There are three guys on the screen, not just two, and that you can work the whole thing from the perspective of Petey is something that in alchemy is very important. And so I wanted to make that clear, how important that was, how important that shift was that happened in the 17th century when we gained science, but we lost a whole lot of other stuff. And so my novels are about that 17th century where science came into being, and science is the reason why we are together here, because we couldn't be together without science.
Robert, in particular in the 17th century, when we went through this new shift, when science became something within our societies, what were some of the good things and then some of the bad things that happened to our views and what we are as a human species?
Well, at that time, we began to believe that we were the only ones that had consciousness and everything else didn't. And that's a huge... It was very important because it created the notion of subject and object, and it created objectivity that didn't exist before, the notion of objectivity. And so through that objectivity, it became possible to create technology. And because through that technology, it was possible to create the internet and the way that we communicate now. So, but what was lost was the sense that we were in constant participation with all different kinds of consciousnesses, that there were many different realities that were going on at the same time, and that by shifting perspective into these realities, we could see an entirely different world. So we could not just see it from our own human perspective, but we could see it from the perspective of the animals and of the trees and of the metals and all these other things. We could shift perspectives, and we could shift it away from this very tight human perspective that we got into. And that is the basis of our whole ecological crisis. Because we think that...
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because... one more thing. We think that everything, that we have consciousness and everything else is a thing. And because everything else is a thing, we can use it. We can just take it. We can mow down the rainforest. We can do all these. But because there's just things, not living beings, not entities with whom we can communicate. So that's what shifted in the 17th century.
That's profound because, we've talked about parallel universes, alternate realities. But in all of our conversations, Robert, this is like the second profound thing I've learned is that we have this perception that if we went to a parallel or an alternate reality, that we're going into a different space and time and everything's going to be different. But the way you just put it is that the way we shift our mind, we are literally going into an alternate reality within the same existence, but
Yes.
the results and everything is different. It's fascinating.
Because it's very profound, because then suddenly you see the world from Petey's perspective, and his perspective is very different because his culture is a very different culture. He comes from some kind of an alien place, from an alien imagination, and if you start looking at our world from the perspective of an alien imagination, you're going to see something really weird. And so therefore, moving out of our very narrow human perspective into the perspective of a whole world where there are consciousnesses galore that you can participate in and can sense. That's, for instance, what Aboriginal people in Australia would do, right? They would see things from the perspective of, for instance, or from the perspective of a giant kangaroo. Then you see the world very differently.
Wow. That I was when you talked about the Aborigines, are there some perceptions and perspectives, I guess, I don't even know if I'm asking this the right way that I want to ask it, to where people stand back? Like you look at we have tribes around our planet still, and people seem to forget that we have tribes all over the planet. Do they refuse? Do they want and create that reality of the way that they live when they could have the technology, they could have better things, but they choose to stay within that,
not to grow
lifestyle?
into that?
Everybody has cell phones. So whether you're an Aboriginal living in a tribal land, everybody has cell phones. So we have all been absorbed into this culture. We've all been absorbed in the culture of technology. If there's one thing that everybody has in common, it is technology. I am all for diversity, but also about what we have in common. And if there's one thing that we all have in common, it's technology. So, yeah, you can live with both.
Right. Now, what's the comparison with the creative imagination in what we're talking about here?
Well, the notion of creative imagination, which is a very old notion that became very active somewhere in the 3rd century AD, is that there is an imagination of which we are part. We live inside of an imagination, and the imagination is all around us, and thereby we can communicate with that imagination, and that imagination we're called the gods. And then in around the 5th century, the Church of Rome became all powerful, and all the gods were pushed away, and only one God remained, and that's the only one that we're allowed to communicate with. But before that, there were myriads of gods. Everything was a god, and you could communicate with everything. And so that narrowing of the communication is a narrowing of the creative imagination.
That is fascinating.
So you talk about voluntary versus involuntary imagination. Kind of explain that for us a little bit.
Yeah. The voluntary imagination is, for instance, you talk to Petey, you know who Petey is, and you begin to make up stories about him, and that that's
we do it every night.
imagination.
Every night, Robert.
Yes, sir, we do.
Everything's his fault. We do it every night.
Yeah, and that's great to have him around. Thank you, Petey. We will blame you. That's what we do with aliens, right?
That's what we do
with anything that's alien to us. We blame it. So, So I think that the involuntary imagination is what happens when you're dreaming, right? As you are dreaming, you do not wish to dream. It just happens to you. You're thrown into a world. and you're being thrown into a world that is experienced as entirely real. You're thrown into a world in which you're convinced that you're awake. You're thrown into a world that is fully embodied, that when you knock on something, you can feel it with your hands, you can hear the sound, you can smell things, your whole body is involved, and it's almost impossible to prove to yourself that you are awake, because everything that you do in a dream, while you're awake, like pinching yourself, you can do that in a dream as well, and then still you're dreaming. So that is what I call the involuntary imagination. It's much more powerful, much greater than the voluntary imagination.
See, Rocky and I've talked about dreaming before, and we often talk about it on the show, where Rocky can remember his dreams.
Mm-hmm.
I have trouble remembering mine after I wake up, and I don't know if that's something that I put a block in place long ago, or if that's just my mind's makeup,
No, it's
to
very
determine where.
difficult to say something in general about that. What I think it has something to do with short-term memory. I think people who have a more acute short-term memory can remember their dreams better, because it has to move into when you wake up. What happens at the end of a dream, you move into a state of amnesia, right? You move through amnesia and then you forget the dream. If you have a very good short-term memory, and your working memory can contain the dream before it sends it to long-term memory, you will remember it better. That's why you see that, for instance, teenagers who have great short-term memory remember very long dreams, and you don't want to work so much with these teenage dreams, because it takes them half an hour to tell it. And
Wow.
all these details and all these, you don't get that with a person who is in their 70s, not so much. So I think that it has to do with the power of short-term memory. That's what I think.
Yeah, or in their
Who
mid
knows?
50s. So I have a question.
Well, yeah,
yes, I know. I have a question because, and I've
well,
never brought this up.
I'm 74, you guys. So,
And you're in better shape
Better
than we
shape
are.
than both of us,
I promise you.
So I have a question about something that my dad told me when I was young about dreams, and I don't know if it's real or not. I had just always believed it. Do dreams, the dream state, does that happen over a period? I mean, I don't know how to explain it, I guess. Does the dream take effect over hours? My dad always told me that you literally dream in the last few seconds before you wake up. It just seems like it's long.
That's not correct.
That's what I thought.
That's not correct.
I knew it. I knew it, Dad. Damn it, Dad.
I
Is
don't
it
want to argue with your dad.
No. Oh, please.
Let me give you the science, okay?
Yeah.
The science tells us that when you wake a person during REM sleep, 90% of the time they will tell you that they were dreaming. They may not remember the dream, but they will tell you that they were dreaming. And REM sleep may be several hours a night. But then there's also what we found. We discovered REM sleep in 1953. And then in the 1980s, what became clear is that dreaming was not just taking place during REM sleep. Dreaming was taking place during several phases of sleep, and also during sleep onset. And that's the other side that is called the hypnagogic phase, which is the moment where you get into sleep. And that has an efficiency of 70%. So you also dream during sleep onset, and then you dream what your father is talking about is called the hypnagogic state, the hypnopompic state. The hypnopompic state is as you come out. That's also a dream state. So your father is partially correct and partially wrong.
50-50.
My entire
it's
life.
better
That's
how I did in high school. So he's good, So it's interesting because, we talk about voluntary, involuntary, the multiple stages of dream states. And I don't know how I feel, but for some reason, it's like, I kind of want to compare even your dream states to a specific reality, because in a way, if you recognize it and you're there, in a way it's real. So
it is real.
Right. So, and then we have our physical state, even though it's voluntary. So because it's voluntary, we're more selective on how we think, or we have blockers that open those certain things. have you ever questioned kind of like reality? Because that's kind of where I get sometimes.
Have I ever questioned reality?
Well, yeah, no, hear me out. I question it every day because I come over here and then this guy
me
yells
too.
at me all the
Of course
time.
I do.
It's weird because it's like, what part is real? Because it's simple altering of our mind shift and creating a different perception literally changes an entire reality of a life.
Absolutely.
It does.
You know,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
and then you go into this dream state, which is involuntary, and that's what we were kind of talking about before the show started. And because I was asking Robert, are there like healing? Is there a way you can heal in your dreams? If you can control your dreams, if you can be more in control in your dreams. So what's the most real reality? And that's what kind of where I get caught
There
up
are
sometimes.
many realities going on at the same time. And the way that we are in a dream is that we are experiencing a reality. And my interest is in experience. So that's why you would call me, my field is phenomenology. Phenomenology is the science of experience. So as we are dreaming, we are in a real world because we experience it as real. And we experience everything around us as physical, and then we wake up. So I call it quasi-physical. So we are in a quasi-physical world that presents itself as entirely real and fully embodied. That's why my field is embodied imagination. There is also a physical world, but that's not the only reality. That is physical reality. There's physical reality, there's quasi-physical reality. There are all kinds of different realities that we experience all the time. So what my job in my life, my day job has been, is I'm going all over the world and ask people how they dream, because people dream differently in different places. And you find that in the world, and if you have the privilege to talk to a lot of people, there are millions of realities going on simultaneously.
You know, it's interesting.
Millions of realities going on simultaneously. I mean, I get that. I understand the concept there, but
Right. But here's
Well-
go ahead, Robert.
Well, look at the Hindu. Like the Hindu have a million gods. Each god is a particular kind of reality.
Yeah.
So they acknowledge that there are so many realities going on at the same time. We have gone through hundreds of years of monotheism, hundreds of years of saying there's one single reality, there's one single truth, and we have been inducted into that kind of state. But it's just one notion. Monotheism is just one of the forms of reality.
No, we have a few minutes before we had to be out for break, and this may carry over, but because there's a second part of this question. But when it comes to understanding what we're talking about and understanding the multiple realities, understanding the shift of perception, shift and change, to be able to do some wonderful things in our physical existence if we understood to put ourselves in the right, state.
right.
What are the benefits of an entire society understanding this instead of being closed off to a singular reality? What would change in our society, in our cultures, in our politics, in our planet, and wars and not wars if we truly understood our existence on multiple planes of reality and understood that we have full control of what we choose to be?
Well, we don't have full control about what we choose to be, because there are some narratives that are in control.
Mm-hmm.
And so these controlling narratives are very difficult to avoid.
Mm.
The controlling narratives tell us what is true. And so therefore, for ourselves to realize that that is just one master narrative, that's just one controlling narrative, and the one who controls the narrative has the power. We know that.
Right.
And so that in order for ourselves to come to our own realities and experience our own realities, we have to face off with that reality that controls us, with that reality, that narrative that controls us. So if we are able to move away from that and begin to sense that there are many realities and that there is one reality that has power, but then there are other realities that don't have power and that you can still feel, I think you become very adaptive. And we know from Darwin that one of the most important traits of any organism is the power to adapt. And so I think that the more narratives you can experience, the more realities you can experience, the more adaptive you become.
You know, I'm sitting there thinking while he was talking, it's like, you know, you go turn on the TV or you follow certain subjects in media, you are constantly being sold other realities. There's other realities competing versus other realities to try to sell you their reality.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, that's the case.
Totally.
I mean, especially, and people are becoming more apparent, more obvious of it now over the last couple of years than ever.
Wow.
Yeah. Robert, stay with us. We're going to go to a quick break, but we'll come back. I want to talk about this apocalyptic imagination, because that's got me intrigued. So we'll be right back with Robert Bosnak. And so abnormalrealities.com, guys, that's where you can find us. odysseyradio.com. Please go out and check out our we've added 4 new shows. We've got Texas Front Porch, Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. We've got Remote Viewing Investigations with Jessica. And we've got Jason McLean Questions Everything. So all those 4 shows have started this week. As a matter of fact, Texas Front Porch is following us on Odyssey Radio tonight.
That's right, baby. Welcome to the program. Welcome to the family. I'm telling you, Brother Phillips, you know, I'm not nearly as researched, but I understand. I get it. And it changes,
I'm learning a
man.
lot. To just kind of digging in, trying to learn what's going on in the world.
My goodness. What's real? I don't know. Phillips, take us home.
Hey, guys, we'll be back in 2 minutes. Stick around. More with Robert Bosnak. At Romika Designs, we're more than just a laser engraving and specialty design company. Much more. I'm Ron Phillips, co-owner of Romika Designs, and if you can dream it, we can probably make it. We can custom laser cut and engrave on nearly all material. Great for one-of-a-kind gifts, home decor, business and specialty items, or personalized and logo designs created just for you or your company. Allow us to become your go-to gift and specialty project partner. Romika Designs can help make your ideas a reality. We're ready to help you design and create that special gift for any occasion, or engrave your personal or business logo on just about any product. View our designs at romikadesigns.com or simply email us with your ideas. We specialize in custom design and would be honored to have the opportunity to discuss it with you. Call us at 817-400-4040, email info@romikadesigns.com, or visit us on the web at romikadesigns.com.
Reality? No thanks. Abnormal reality? Yes, please. Abnormal Realities with Rocky Stucci and Ron Phillips.
The best advice I can give anybody, do not wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and eat a big-ass bowl of cereal.
Why, Rocky? Why should you not wake up at 3 in the morning and eat a big-ass bowl of Cocoa Puffs?
Because I took a selfie of me sitting on the toilet today for a half an hour to Brother Filippo.
What the hell were you doing
I
awake
woke
at
up
3
hungry.
a.m.,
I was
dude?
dreaming about cereal or something, and I woke up and I was on. I got up and I went.
Yeah, he did. Unfortunately.
And it was weird. It's like it had its own language because
Wait, what did?
my ass had a whole different language. It's like I even understood some of it. It was weird.
That's some paranormal shit right there.
Abnormal Realities. Every weeknight, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Stucci, I'm coming for your butthole.
Tore it up, and then it tore you up. Rock, come on. I did it for you. What's the matter? You weren't prepared for that promo, were you?
Probably not the right promo to have with. I mean,
I could see our guest. He enjoyed the promo. I just have to give him that. Let's bring him back in, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robert Bosnak. Robert, I hope that wasn't too embarrassing.
Oh, God, no. It was great about the Cocoa Puffs. Absolutely.
it was a
Cocoa
nightmare,
Puff
brother.
on.
It was a nightmare. I mean, I needed a hug and some soup.
Yeah, no, I would help you see it from the perspective of the Cocoa Puffs.
Oh.
Yeah, see now, there you go. This could get really deep here tonight, Rocky.
Yeah, but the way I'm going to go with it ain't going to be appropriate for this program tonight.
Okay, good. So let's not go there. We're not going there.
I told Ron, Robert, during the break, before Ron gets into his subject, that I just wanted to carry over really quick before I lose thought on it in regards to what we were talking about before we went out to the break. Now, when we talk about the multiple perceptions or perspectives, and because I always believe this, I mean, if you study, such as yourself, history, and you watch how certain populations existed and how they were ruled and you know, belief systems indoctrinated into every generation growing up and became a very strict ideology that becomes even dominant globally, right? You look at how children are raised and you look at how adults are raised. I get frightened. I go onto social media, and sometimes the behavior of adults on social media frightens me. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about this information that we're witness to and not understanding that some of these people don't understand the perception thing and the mind shift changing thing. And so they're stuck in that singular reality, and it's kind of chaos and toxic and poison and unhealthy and just drama and ick. Everything is ick inside that vicious matrix. I truly always believed that if we had a planet, a country, a village even, in regards to raising people to think exactly what we're talking about and understanding it all, and not just one view, but all of it, we can literally develop this world just through that act to become a better place. No? I felt it. I felt it.
I don't know. Yeah, because it's unavoidable to have a perspective. Right. We always have a perspective. You have an American perspective. If I compare your perspective with, I have the privilege of teaching in many different places. If I compare your perspective with a Chinese perspective, it's going to be very different, or compared to a Russian perspective. Right. All these perspectives are very different, and you are caught in a particular perspective. But if you are able to realize that there are many perspectives that you intrinsically are part of and have in you, and you can start finding these perspectives in yourself. And dreaming is a wonderful way of doing that. When you find these different perspectives in yourself, then you have something to counter the perspective that has you in its grip. And that's why, to me, dreaming is like travel. You know, you begin to see different countries, you begin to meet different peoples, and you get into different perspectives.
I wonder when because we know people that dream a lot like myself, and I can tell you stories of multiple different dreams. I dreamt I was in a UFO craft where they made humans. It was the weirdest thing.
That's great. You should sell that one.
Huh?
You should sell that one, he said.
Okay, we can talk. It's a pretty fascinating story. But where was I going with that when I was talking about? Is there something that maybe could have triggered certain people's minds for them to be able to dream more vividly? Or is there a practice they do? Is it a meditation that they do? Is it just the opening of reality? Can somebody control, like Ron says that he don't remember his dreams? Can he do anything to be able to shift something to be able to remember?
Well, first, you must want to remember your dreams, okay? Because there are whole cultures where you are judged to be sick when you dream. What? Dream is something that is bad for you. And so it really depends where you're from. So the first thing is, you must want to remember your dreams. If you don't want to remember your dreams, then you won't.
Well, and there was a period of time in my life where I was traumatized by nightmares because I used to have them all the time. Yeah. And so I started blocking it all out. And I think that's where that came from, honestly.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And so if you think that now you're ready to start looking at your dreams again, then you first have to realize that a dream doesn't have to be an elaborate narrative. A dream can just be an event. I was walking down the street and I saw a stoplight, and that was all. Yeah. And so to get yourself back into the sense of walking down the street, of seeing the stoplight, of seeing what kind of light it is, what the sounds are like, getting back into that moment, will then start drawing in more dreams. So don't think that an only dream is like like what Rocky is telling us, that this dream that I said you can sell that to Hollywood. That is not usually not the dreaming. Dreaming is usually very simple. I'm in a store and I see something, or I'm riding my bicycle. Dreams are usually very humdrum.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not.
Sometimes they're not, but the majority of
Yeah,
dreams, according to research, are.
yeah. There are some times where my dream would be an elaborate enough dream that I would remember bits and pieces of it, like going to war or flying a plane or
Oh,
something to that effect.
yeah.
But
Mhm.
for the most part, I can't remember the entire dream itself. But I may flash back into it like later in the afternoon, thinking,
Yes.
"Oh wow, I
Hmm.
remember I dreamed about that last night."
Yeah.
Robert, one thing I've really grown just through this conversation to absolutely appreciate about you is your academic thought. There are certain things, like even before the show, there are certain things that you didn't research a lot on, and you just said, "I don't know a lot about it," and you approached this conversation with, I mean, brilliantly, and I'm so grateful for that. So I want to ask this. I'm sorry, Ron,
No, go
because
ahead.
I know you might get to that question, but have you ever researched in this state of reality premonitions, or like, I don't know if it's the right word for it, but like a psychic
Hmm.
phenomena through an altered
Yeah.
state, dream state?
Hmm. See, the problem with premonitions is that sometimes they're actual premonitions and sometimes they're not. And to differentiate between them is very difficult. And you usually find that something was a premonition with 2020 hindsight.
Mm.
Oh, that was a premonition. Um, the premonitions that I see are usually very trivial. That a person has, for instance, a dream about a fire truck, and then they walk outside and they see a fire truck like that. Those kind of things. And then there are premonitions that are very significant. And there are whole cultures that are based on those premonitions, where you have a premonition that somebody's going to die, and that actually happens. Or So yes, the problem with premonitions is that you don't know which of these images are premonitions or precognitions, and which of them are your general imagination. I've always found that to be the most difficult part. When I was studying in Zurich, there were people who would not come to see you because they dreamt that the train was going to derail, and so they would miss their appointments. Yeah, of course. 99.999% of the time, the train does not derail when
Right.
you dream about them. But for that 1/10 of a percent, it does. That feels like a premonition.
Right.
It makes sense. I used to get kind of that way when I was flying planes.
Hmm.
I'm just a private pilot, and
Yeah.
there were days where I would get ready to go fly, and my gut, I guess, would tell me today's not a good day to do that for whatever
Hmm.
reason. And so
Right.
sometimes I would listen to it, and sometimes I wouldn't. But um,
Hmm.
I never lost that. So I
Hmm.
haven't flown very much in the past, and for whatever reason. But
Hmm.
as we kind of move into a little bit of a different subject, apocalyptic imagination, and then of course it talks about in here that you've done that for politics, for holy war, for ecological crises and things like that. Can you kind of explain
So,
what apocalyptic
mhm.
imagination is?
Yeah. The apocalyptic imagination, the word apocalypse means revelation. And so the apocalyptic imagination has to do with the revelation of a new world. But in order to get to that new world, this world has to end. So therefore, apocalyptic imagination is frequently about doom. And these doom fantasies are very strongly influencing politics. Um, like in the when I did my first Facing Apocalypse conference in 1983, we were very much focusing on the nuclear issue because
Right.
the nuclear clock, as you may remember, was always like 5-6 minutes to midnight. It was always almost going to happen. So there was a very powerful apocalyptic imagination in the nuclear issue. And then I did a conference about how it was also in ecology, and that I find very dangerous, because if we mix apocalyptic imagination with the ecological threats, then we're all going to burn out, because the ecological threats are there and they're very dangerous. We're in a very dangerous moment in history. There's no doubt about it. But if you say that we have 10 years to solve it, then you make everybody burn out, because this cannot be solved in 10 years. This is to be solved in 200 years, 300 years. We have to do this with our children, our grandchildren. We have to do this constantly, because we have caused such a strong effect on the world that it will take a long time to work through it. But if you're in an apocalyptic imagination, you don't have that time. You suddenly, it has to happen in 10 years. Well, I don't know if you remember, but in the 80s, when I was doing these conferences in the 80s, people said the world is coming to an end if we don't change everything in the next 5 years. And then it was in the next 10 years. But so the world would come to an end in 1995, or the world would come to an end in 1985. The world always is coming to an end in the apocalyptic imagination.
Right.
But you have to realize that there are real dangers. So I'm not saying the world is not in a dangerous state, but I'm saying that if you mix it up with apocalyptic imagination, you get into deep trouble.
It's funny because we did a whole show, not a whole show, but like an entire segment of since, like 100 AD, all the different times that they believed was going to be an apocalyptic event. It just seems over and over and over and over again in history.
And all of these
We
people
do it all the time.
Yeah, and there are too many people who listen to these people who have premonitions, I guess you could say, of the world ending and what date it's going to happen in time, right? Too many people out there get all confused and concerned about it. I mean, what was that group?
But
There was that group of people that killed themselves when they thought that the alien spaceship was coming in. Well, I can't remember who that group was.
I can't remember.
But that kind of
was it
cultish.
Jonestown or something?
No, Jonestown was a little bit farther back. This happened in the 90s, I think. But anyhow, it was. But the
Heaven's
alien,
Gate.
Heaven's Gate. Yeah, the alien ship that was behind Halley's Comet, that kind of thing. And the cultish aspect of thinking that everything is going to end tomorrow or 5 years from now if we don't change our ways today. Is that what an apocalyptic imagination is?
Correct. And yes, correct. And so now you're just talking about cults, but this is something that we all do, and it's very manipulable politically, because we all have these apocalyptic fears, and so it's very easy for somebody to manipulate your apocalyptic fears. But the danger of it is that you will burn out, because you cannot do this at such a high pitch. We have to do this for generations.
It just dawned on me what he's saying is kind of what happened to me and you.
What?
It's I mean, look, in this day and age, let's just say the last 5, 6, 7 years, everybody's apocalyptic imagination is burning them out from a political standpoint. We get that. We understand it. And Rocky and I we do political talk radio, and both of us are just really burned out on politics.
I want to learn about life, you know, and explore existence.
Because it's always been this, this things are, the world's coming to an end, things are going to hell in a handbasket kind of thing.
Hate and chaos, hate and chaos, hate and chaos.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous. That can be weaponized against entire populations.
Yeah. And so we have to realize that the reason why I started to do these conferences was with the coming of the year 2000. The apocalyptic imagination would increase, because the millennium is very much part of the apocalyptic imagination. And I don't know if you remember Y2K, where everything, the whole computer world was going to collapse.
I distinctly remember it, because I'm an IT guy, and it was my job to make sure our computers kept running. That changeover. What a miserable time that was.
You all right?
I'm okay.
calm down. It's all right, brother. You're gonna be all right.
So it has enormous influence, and we have to realize that we come back now to the multiple realities. There is a reality in which we experience that the world is going to come to an end. And because it's true, the world is going to come to an end because we're going to die. And we are a whole world, and that our world is going to come to an end. But if we take that as the whole world is coming to an end, then you get into incredible problems in actual political thinking.
This is frightening. This is frightening to me. And this goes right back to when I say, cultures, even villages, just breeding the proper thoughts into the upcoming generations, because this stuff here, this stuff scares me to death. And we talk about this, and it is every part of our everyday existence. And we're stuck in it.
We are. We're stuck in it.
How can we not be better than that?
And back when he was talking about the narrative, the people who drive the narrative are the people who are in power. That's what we're seeing now.
Oh, it just sickens me to my
But there's one other thing about the apocalyptic imagination, and that is the holy war. And that is the war between good and evil. And I think in these Americas, we've now gotten into that. There's one party that's good, there's another party that is evil, and it becomes polarized more and more. And of course, because we have sold our souls to the advertisers in the social media, it sells more to polarize, and so it's getting more and more polarized. That's also part of the apocalyptic imagination. And then we have people in America, families in America, that don't talk together anymore because the apocalyptic imagination has polarized them so strongly that they can't even have their love of family anymore.
I am so glad we've got this explanation now to fall back on, quite honestly, because for years I'm struggling with what in the hell is going on, not only in this country, but around the world. I mean, and then, and look, the pandemic that happened, don't get me wrong, it happened, it's there, whatever's going on, but the polarization of just this country caused that to be a much bigger deal than it needed to be, quite honestly. The polarization was already there.
The polarization was already there, and it just got worse because there were two narratives that were standing against each other, and these narratives were just colliding. And that's why I'm saying there are multiple realities. They're not just two realities, the reality of the right and the reality of the left. There are many, many, many realities, as many as there are people, and all these realities have to be experienced. And then we can keep on talking together, because otherwise I'm a psychoanalyst, so I'm a psychotherapist. So I see in my practice people who are not talking to their families anymore. That I find frightening.
It's not just polarized at a political level. It has gone down to literally how one neighbor lives compared to the other. And honestly, I saw...
Or religion, dude. Religion is a big thing that keeps people apart too. Politics and religion are the two big ones, but I agree with you. Wow.
It's troubling. All right, let's, I want to make sure we get in and talk about all the books.
All the books, yeah. So
I said, hey, we're going to talk about the books right off the bat.
And you didn't do it.
Swear to God, we're going to go right in and we're going to hit right to it.
There's so many interesting things going on.
So many, yes. So Robert, tell us about your books when you've got a new one coming out, I think you said.
Yes. Well, I have a series of novels coming out about alchemy, and it's basically science fiction usually is about the future. I'm doing science fiction in the past. So it is set up at the time when science is taking over, and where there's a big battle going on between the narratives of the Church of Rome that has put Galileo under house arrest, and the narrative of science that is the freedom of experimenting. And those are the two narratives at that time that are going against each other. And in that time, there were alchemists, And like Isaac Newton was an alchemist, and Robert Boyle, the father of chemistry, was an alchemist. And these alchemists had a substance that is called red sulfur. And red sulfur, that's the name of the series of book. Red sulfur is the core of all creativity, because in alchemy, if you go to the core of matter, you don't find energy. If you go to the core of matter, you find creativity. So it's a very different notion. In science, we are now E is mc squared, and Einstein, that matter and energy is the same. But in alchemy, it was that matter at the core of it was creativity. And the center of all creativity was called red sulfur, or the philosopher's stone. And so the story goes from the notion that there's one family that still has that philosopher's stone, that can still transform things with that power of the philosopher's stone. And they're being pursued by phantoms and by kings, and by everybody wants it from them. And it's also a love story, because there is this alchemist who has to pass this along to his children, and he doesn't have children. He falls in love with a woman who can't have children, and she says, well, the person who grew up as my daughter, she can have our children for us. And that creates incredible havoc with a triangular relationship that is really difficult to bear. And they have children, and these children have to bring alchemy through to the future, and they have to fight the battle of how we can stay in touch with that creative imagination, that philosopher's stone, and how we can live with it forever. So that is the premise of the book.
Wow, the whole relationship thing. I got questions about that too.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Robert, you've got other books, A Little Course in Dreams, that says here that it was published in 12 languages. Does that kind of go into what we talked about tonight too, a little bit?
Yes, and also the main book that goes into this is my book called Embodiment: Creative Imagination in Medicine, Art, and Travel.
Got it. Yeah.
And so that goes very deeply into the shifting of perspectives, and that when you go to another perspective, you get into an entirely different world. And that's what I'm trying to help people with, to get out of their narrow perspectives into a larger perspective.
Makes absolute sense.
Oh, my goodness.
My mind got to work out tonight. I love it.
Yeah, no,
I love these kind of shows.
I love it. It's a deep thinking, frightening conversation. There's if somebody's stomach didn't turn at all during the last 15 minutes during that conversation, then they're not feeling it. They're not understanding what we're trying to talk about here. Because I mean, you understand it from the perspective how you put it tonight, Robert. I mean, my stomach turned. It turned, and it bothers me, because I understand through my personal struggles in life, and I know I had to make a major mind shift in my life. And so I call this my new life, and I got my past life. And it took that shift in my mind, and it took me to alter my perception. And it took me to say, I'm not going to be this, I'm going to be this. It took me to say, I'm not going to be a victim of this, I choose to be that. It was a complete mind shift. But if I wasn't willing to make that psychological shift, I would never have gotten to where we're at today. I would have stayed stuck in the same place, just not doing the same bad habits.
Ladies and gentlemen, we do have to cut this short now, because
we're just getting deep.
I know we're running short on time, but I did want to get his website addresses out there for you. They are cyberdreamwork.com and jungplatform.com. Please go check those out. Robert Bosnak, our guest tonight. And Robert, we'd love to have you back at some point in the future, because I know there's a lot more we didn't get to discuss in this short hour that we had.
Scratching the surface.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this a lot.
Thank you so much for your time.
So, Robert, hang out just a second. We'll be back with you as soon as our show is over. But we're honored to have you with us tonight. Rocky?
Woo! Oh, my brain is on fire.
He's like,
now.
My brain hurts right now.
Well, because you know what? This is the last two guests. I'm telling you right now, the last two guests, there was something very profound in both of what they were talking about, because it's just a balance into kind of what I believe in. I don't know how I got to believe what I believe. Yeah. I don't know. So when I hear people like Robert and our last guest, it's like, okay, I believe this somehow. Don't know how I got here, but these gentlemen who are well educated, are validating where I'm at.
Fantastic.
I need a hug.
Abnormalrealities.com, OdysseyRadio.com, guys. That's where you can find us. Go out, check out the new shows. We appreciate you hanging with us. We do have guests all week this week.
All week, come on.
Come back and see it. We'll post a promo for them tomorrow night, for the show tomorrow night. Guys, we love you.
Love you
Come back
guys.
tomorrow night. See ya.